Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Ben here teaching Sunday school this week. Bearded Ben, actually. If you would like to do something fun, go to our website, look at all the past 5 weeks since we've been in pandemic. You'll see my beard. It grows each week, and my wife loves it. So I am quarantined, more than most. Anyway, today we're going to pick up with our story of Jacob. Jacob is a very interesting Bible character. And if you remember, the first time we heard about Jacob, it was with Esau when he tricked Esau. He gave him some soup, and Esau was like, devoured the soup. And Esau was the hairy one, the good hunter, but he gave up his birthright. So Jacob tricked him, stole his birthright, got all the land and inheritance that Esau deserved. And then he ran. He was on the run. Esau was pursuing Jacob, and he said he wanted to kill him. And then if you remember the next time we encountered Jacob, the week after that, he was at a well, which is now known as Jacob's well. He met his future wife, and then Jacob was deceived by Laban, who is his future wife's father. So Jacob, the trickster, was tricked. The deceiver was deceived, and then eventually married the right woman, which is Rachel. But then he made a deal with Laban because of all the trickery that he would leave where he was. So now Jacob was on the run from Esau. He was now on the run from Laban. And this trickster, now we pick him up again in this story here. And we're going to see God be extremely faithful to our man Jacob. Now, question for you at home, little activity. Do you have anything in your house? I want you to pause the video in a second, have a look. Do you have anything that you are using for a purpose for which it was not intended? It's been changed. One example might be we have in our house mason jars. You know those big glass jars that a lot of times like pasta sauce comes in? Well, once the pasta is out, because I like to drink a big tall glass of lemonade or juice with dinner, we pour out the pasta sauce and I fill it with a drink. So that's one repurposed thing. Other ones that I found just quickly in the office, we have a coffee cup here, which is being used to hold pens and pencils. That's quite common. It's been changed, repurposed. Another one is the Evangelical Dictionary of Theology that I studied in seminary, which is now being used as a paperweight in my office. So those are just a couple of quick examples of things that are being repurposed, rebranded, used for something else. And today we're going to find out that Jacob is undergoing the same sort of transition as the coffee cup and the mason jar and my Evangelical Dictionary of Theology. He is being rebranded. He's being changed and redeemed and dusted off into a new man. So we're going to read our story today. We are back in the book of Genesis. It's Genesis chapter 32, verses 24 to 27. I'll read that for you. Feel free to read along with me. Genesis chapter 32, verse 24. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he could not defeat him, he struck Jacob's hip socket as they wrestled, and he dislocated his hip. Then he said to Jacob, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked. "Jacob," he replied. "Your name will no longer be Jacob," he said. "It will be Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Verse 29. Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he answered, "Why do you ask my name?" And he blessed him right then and there. Jacob then named the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face. He said, "Yet my life has been spared." 31. The sun shone on him as he passed by Peniel, limping because of his hip. That is why still today the Israelites don't eat the thigh muscle that is at the hip socket, because he struck Jacob's hip socket at the thigh muscle. Interesting note. That was all just a quote from Genesis, which again is thousands of years old. But still today, Orthodox Jews who take the Old Testament particularly as literal and directly from the mouth of God, Orthodox Jews today, 2020, they do not eat the sciatic nerve, which is basically where what that Bible verse is talking about. The sciatic nerve is the one that joins the hip. So that's how they eat when you hear kosher. If you're Orthodox Jew, in order to eat meat, it has to be prepared kosher. And that's because of the Talmud, and that's the sciatic nerve being removed. So there's a lot of things that make me sort of ask questions that I sort of don't understand about Orthodox Judaism, but what I do really love and respect about Orthodox Jews is, man, when God says to do something, they just do it. And they do it to 110%, the best they can. And so it's interesting that they still don't do that today. So Jacob's name. Originally, we talked about the meaning of names. I'm not sure if you remember a few weeks back if you were with us or not, but the meaning of names in Bible times was very significant and often had a big impact on the people's lives. So in this case, Jacob's name meant trickster, supplanter, heel grabber, because he was that second born, and it also meant deceiver. That was the meaning of the name Jacob. So when God asked him, a lot of theologians actually believe that God was wrestling with Jacob. It was Jacob wrestling with God himself, not an angel, although that is up for discussion. But then God offered the patriarch an opportunity to confess his character, to change himself. And Jacob did, and God changed his name. And it went to Israel. And this is why Jacob is such a fascinating character. He's not perfect, super far from perfect, but God chooses to redeem him, to repurpose him, to change him. And from that moment forward, when he changes his name to Israel, this deceiver, this sinful man is used to bring, ultimately, to be involved in the lineage of Jesus Christ himself. So, quick pause for you at home. I want you to try to think about some past mistakes that you have made. I want you to pause the video, talk amongst yourselves. Have you made a mistake in the past that sort of defines you or it sticks with you a bit more than you would like? Pause the video. All right, not sure if you chose to pause or you're still with us, but a lot of us have made mistakes in the past that we don't want to define our future. I know for me, I've shared many times with the youth group, and I share with you today, my past is peppered with things that I don't want my future to include. Lying, cheating, stealing, picking on people I shouldn't have picked on, making fun of people I should have made fun of. They're all part of my past, and I'm so thankful that I'm redeemed. I'm a new man because of Christ. There are many different interpretations of the name Israel, although most have a similar meaning, which is strives with God or God fights. And that's what Jacob's new name is. He's no longer a deceiver. He's now striving with God, fighting with God, trying to do the right thing. And this is when I start to really identify with Jacob, who, when I first met him in the Bible, I hated him. I'm like, this guy is slippery, dodgy. I don't like him. Now he's wrestling with God. He's really pursuing God. He wants to be different. And he hung on to God until he was blessed. Now I can relate to Jacob. All right, next question for you at home. Think of a time when you specifically wrestled with God. What did you learn, or what are you learning during this time? And this is so relevant for us. So you might be wrestling with God right now during the pandemic. Why God? There's a lot of different ways to look at this pandemic, but a lot of you might be wrestling with God. Why did you allow this? Why is my friend sick? Why has my mom or dad or cousin or aunt or uncle lost their job? Or why has someone died because of coronavirus? Or you might, maybe there's an argument with your parents. You've been saying, why, God, am I arguing with my parents so often? You're wrestling with God. You're asking him these big questions. Or maybe someone you know got very sick or even died. Why, God? So I want you to think about that. Talk amongst yourselves. What have you wrestled with God about? All right. Not sure if you paused or not, but if you haven't wrestled with God, I also want you to think about that. Why have you never wrestled with God? It's an important part of being a Christ follower. Now, I want you to notice the progression that Jacob goes through in the 3 lessons that we've had with him. He goes from sinner, deceiver, liar, right? Then he becomes his own man. He gets humbled in lots of ways. He is deceived too. He's a deceiver who gets deceived. And now he's on the run. His brother wants to kill him. His father-in-law hates him. He's having a huge dose of humility. So he goes from sin to humility, to name change, to blessing, to new identity, and then to responsibility. Jacob is being refined. Jacob is becoming a man of God. He's laying down his pride. He's realizing that he's a sinner, and he's coming to the Lord, wrestling with God, saying, bless me. Now I really start to see Jacob being dusted off. That lump of coal is now looking more like a diamond, and I can resonate with this journey that Jacob has gone on, and I hope you can too. So, as we conclude today, does this mean that we, Christians, should literally change our names? Yes or no? Have a chat. All right, hope you're back with us. Not sure if you decide you need to change your name or not. Up to you. I would probably say no. It's more of a mental state. It's more of a how you identify. I'm a Christ follower. You don't necessarily need to change your name to Israel or something along those lines. Next question. I already asked this one. I want you to think about it again. What are some ways you are wrestling with God today? And if you're not wrestling with God with some big questions, I want to challenge you. Take your biggest fears and anxieties to the Lord. Wrestle with Him. Ask God to bless you in the areas that cause you the most stress. Next question for you to discuss. Whose name do you tend to live under in daily life? And this one convicts myself, and hopefully you can get convicted this morning in a good way. Do you live under your name or Christ's? Which one is your identity coming from? Is it Ben, Matthew, Jacob, Susan, Freddie, Danny, Billy, Bobby? I can't think of any more names. Or do you live and identify under Christ? It's a question you should be asking yourself. All right, last one. How will we live differently each day, living first and foremost as a Christian? As in, I'm a Christ follower whose name is Ben. And I want you to try to think about yourself that way. You're a Christ follower whose name is fill in the blank with your name. So guys, as you go around this week, I want you to know that God is taking you through a refinement process. He's taking you through a process of who you were to who you are and who you will be. And please keep in mind, it's going to hurt sometimes. It's going to be confusing sometimes. That's okay. It's part of the process. God says He knows the plans I have for you, and nothing is beyond His control. Guys, God loves you. Have a great week. Stay safe. And remember, don't lick shopping carts. See ya.